Good afternoon. We are now convening our council session where we are discussing state legislation as well as in today's topic, budget priorities laid forth by the governor. I want to once again thank Melanie Winger and her team for helping us connect to these critically important state issues. And I also want to especially thank our Montgomery County delegation who remains steadfast and committed and has been very engaged, not just in state legislative issues, but has been keeping tabs operationally on what's happening here in COVID. The relationship and partnership we have with our state colleagues is critically important, never important than it has been these last 2 years. And so we look forward to this afternoon's discussion. Ms. Winger, I turn it over to you to walk us through the packet. And colleagues, just text me if you have a question that you'd like to ask of Ms. Winger, and I will put you in the queue. I also want to thank Ms. McCartney-Green for her partnership and alliance and her great work working with Melanie and her team as well. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. McCartney-Green on behalf of the council to make some opening comments, and then we'll turn it over to Ms. Winger to walk us through the packet. Ms. McCartney-Green.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon, council members. As you know, the Maryland General Assembly begun legislative session on January 12th. And so today we're here to bring to the council a few bills that actually fell in line with the council's legislative priorities that were approved last year. And so a lot of the state bills that were brought today before you falls under COVID relief and economic resilience, local authority, elections, and environment. And as you mentioned, Melanie Wenger and her team is here to be able to provide some background, further discussion, and answer any of your questions. I do want to let you know that your packet is condensed with two parts. First, it has a chart that is prepared by council staff that will include attorney and legislative analyst direction on whether or not the council should support a state bill. In addition, the packet also includes OIR's memorandum that provides more detail, a bill summary, and also lists the sponsor for the bill. With that said, Council President, I'm happy to just start the discussion on each bill and then have Melanie weigh in and provide further direction.
That sounds perfect. Thank you, Ms. McCartney-Green.
Good. Mel, did you have any comments before I get started?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that I did attach two spreadsheets to the packet about the impact of the governor's budget on Montgomery County. I'm glad to talk more about that or let you peruse it at your leisure. Including I can talk more about how the governor structured his budget if you want to talk about that, but we don't have to. We can do that another time or offline and head straight to the bills, however you'd like to handle it, Council President.
I do think having a brief overview on highlights with regards to the budget is appropriate, especially given what's going on. I know we've got a tight timeline here, but I think we need to get through all of that.
So Mel, I can go through the bills and then we can talk about the budget at the end.
That sounds fine.
Okay, perfect. And so House Bill 89 is the first one that I'll start with, and I'm on circle page 1. And that the bill title is the Child Care Stabilization Grant Program and Child Care Expansion Grant Program. And so this bill will establish two grants, one to support child care providers that are in danger of closing due to financial hardship within the next 12 months. And then the second part of the bill would provide funding for child care providers that are looking to start a new child care program or for existing programs. In both of those, the governor is expected to set aside a certain appropriations for both grants. Council staff has reviewed this bill and recommends that the council support House Bill 89.
Without objection, colleagues? Without objection.
Okay, great. And so House Bill 114, Access to Counsel and Immigration Proceeding Programs. This bill would establish an access to counsel in immigration proceedings administered by the Maryland Legal Services Corporation, which essentially provides legal representation for certain individuals that may be detained in the United States. It would cover judicial and administrative immigration proceedings and where an individual is subject for removal from the United States. This is consistent with the council's effort to increase access to counsel and as a matter of equity and inclusion for residents recovering from the COVID emergency. Council staff recommends the council support House Bill 114.
Sorry, let me just clean up what I said before. Without objection, we approve the staff recommendation. Correct, colleagues? And of all of my colleagues present, because several are not. All right, without objection, we concur with the staff recommendation of all colleagues present.
Okay, now moving on to Senate Bill 223, Landlord and Tenant Eviction Actions, Filing, Surcharge, and Prohibited Lease Provisions. This bill was requested by the Attorney General, and it's a reintroduction of last year's bill, House Bill 1008. I do want to make a correction to the council staff chart that's provided to you. Inadvertently included additional language from a different bill. And so council, I'll explain to you that this bill essentially would increase the filing fee when it relates to summary ejectment proceedings, breach of lease, and including also tenant holdover. So right now the fee is $8, and Maryland is the lowest in the country for having a filing fee that low. This bill would actually raise that fee from $8 to $73. This aligns with the council's priorities to support keeping tenants housed and to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 and any related financial hardship. Council staff recommends the council support Senate Bill 223.
Without objection, we support the staff recommendation. Without objection of all those present.
Okay, great. And so moving on to Senate Bill 6, Landlord and Tenant Residential Leases, Tenant Rights and Protection, more formally called the Tenant Protection Act of 2022. This bill requires landlord to use a ratio utility billing system called RUBS to provide a written disclosure containing certain information to prospective tenants and makes a lease provision requiring a tenant to pay utility charges under RUBS unenforceable if the landlord does not provide the mandatory disclosure provision. This is consistent with county law and what the county requires here for lease provisions. And so this bill is also supporting COVID-19 reliefs and would bring more clarity in a landlord's obligation regarding utility bills. And so council staff would recommend to support Senate Bill 6.
Not seeing any text messages, so without objection, we support the staff recommendation among all those present.
Okay, and now moving on to our local authority. And so there are two bills that fall under this. The first one is Senate Bill 139, Public Health Semi-Public Pools Lifeguards. This bill would require at least one lifeguard to be present at certain facilities, which includes hotels, health clubs, and similar facilities regardless of the size of the swimming pool. Council staff recommends to oppose this bill. This would preempt our local law, most recently passed Council Bill 2120 that exempts lifeguards at public spas, hotels, and health clubs. And just to provide a little bit more clarity and background on this, currently the county law does not require a lifeguard to be present at a hotel swimming pool that's not on the weekends. So on the weekends, a lifeguard is required to be present, but not the hours of Monday through Friday. This law would preempt that. In addition, most recently, the council did pass a swimming pool bill that did not require a lifeguard at fitness facilities or health clubs that were under a certain size. This would also preempt county law. So the recommendation from council staff to council is to oppose Senate Bill 139.
Thank you. I know Councilmember Katz would like to speak, and as co-lead, I believe probably Councilmember Rice would as well. I'll just note two things, because I remember vividly this discussion, and as the former director of the Recreation Department, when this was first introduced, it gave me a little pause, but after discussion and consultation and really effective work sessions, it became clear that we're talking about a small group of pools here in our community. And I think what we did at the local level was reasonably enacted. I also think there's a broader issue of local control, especially when we do weigh in on specific issues and having those superseded as a general practice, which is not something in principle that I think my colleagues and I are generally supportive of. So I appreciate, I guess, the intent. But I agree with the staff recommendation here personally as well to oppose. But I yield to Councilmember Katz and then Councilmember Rice to make some comments as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Well said. Your memory serves you well, just as I have a feeling it's going to serve Councilmember Rice on this issue. We worked hard and on it twice. I mean, two separate pieces of legislation. It was by, in some cases, it was by compromise. We wanted to bring ourselves in line with many other parts of the state. In fact, I think it was every other part of the state, but can't remember every part of that one. But at any rate, I believe we are right to oppose it. I believe our legislation is good legislation. And as I say, I'd like to thank all who worked on this, Ms. McCartney Green and all others who've worked on this, but this should be opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep it brief. Again, you heard from Councilmember Katz, and I couldn't agree with him more that this was compromise, and we worked together with both sides of the industry to ensure that we had something that made sense for our community. And that's what local control is all about, making sure that we have something that makes sense for our greater community, that upholds the tenets of safety, while at the same time ensuring that we can provide flexibility to businesses that aren't onerous. And we actually did that. We struck a balance. And so by moving forward with this state legislation would upend that balance. And so for that reasons, I support the oppose. Thanks.
Thank you. I see no other speakers on this issue, so it looks like we support the staff recommendation, and so let's to oppose. So let's take that position. Thank you, Ms. McCartney-Green. By all those present.
Thank you, Council President. So I'll move to the next bill, Senate Bill 99, cigarettes, tobacco products, and electronic smoking devices, local law authorization. And so this bill would permit the county to regulate the sale and distribution of traditional hookahs, including tobacco and other smoke products containing tobacco or nicotine, and electronic hookahs as well, including vaping liquid. Council staff recommends to support the bill because it would expand the county's regulatory authority regarding products that affect public health. With that being said, council staff recommends the council support Senate Bill 99.
So just you get a two for here as chair of HHS. I know that this council has been very aggressive and leading the way with regards to regulating tobacco use and using every lever we can at the local level, including around the issue of vaping. I appreciate that hookah has been included in this discussion because that is an ongoing issue, one that does fall into a gray area and makes it awkward for local jurisdictions to be able to enforce and enact. So I do agree with the staff recommendation here. Seeing no other speakers without opposition, we support this one as well, Ms. McCartney-Green, by all those present.
Okay, moving along to Senate Bill 158, State Board of Elections, Contracts and Invoice Requirements. And so this bill would increase transparency regarding state mandated election costs and codify the arrangement of a 50-50 cost share between the state and the local Board of Elections for all state mandated election related costs. Our council staff recommends the council support Senate Bill 158.
I'll just note that our Government Operations Committee, led by Council Chair Navarro, has really been doing some heavy lifting in this space, and I think that's consistent and is complementary of what we've been doing at the local level. So without opposition then, Chair Navarro. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Absolutely, I do want to reiterate that our Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee for years has been talking about this issue and stepping up and hoping that we would find a way forward that would be more equitable for everyone. And so I think this moves us in that direction, and it's welcome. It's a welcome proposal. Thank you.
So without opposition, we support the council staff recommendation among all those present.
Okay, now our Senate Bill 163, Election Law, Ballots, Processing and Reporting Procedures. This bill would allow for the earlier processing and tabulation of absentee ballots. Currently, absentee ballots may not be tabulated until after Election Day. This bill would clarify that the absentee ballots may be accepted and processed before Election Day and that they may be tabulated on Election Day. Staff recommends to support, recognizing that there might be some technical amendments that may be needed.
Seeing no comments from my colleagues, then I'll assume that's without opposition, supporting the staff recommendation among all those present.
And so our last bill, which falls under the alignment of, or the priority of environment, House Bill 307, Environment Packaging Materials. And so this bill would provide a new funding source, basically payments from producers of materials that end up in our solid waste system that could be available to other jurisdictions throughout the state for recycling, composting infrastructure, and programs. Council staff recommends to support House Bill 307.
Again, seeing no hands or comments from colleagues, we support staff recommendation without objection among all those present.
That concludes the presentation for the state bills for today, Council President. So I know if Mel wants to talk about the budget, we probably can transition to there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ms. McCartney-Green. You made that easy for us. Ms. Winger, you're on.
Okay, so back to the two charts at the back of the document that you have. One is just what the governor's budget request looks like for Montgomery County as far as direct state aid. And there's a couple of things that are a little bit interesting because one thing that the governor did not bring in a budget reconciliation act this year, which means that this shouldn't be a surprise given the fact that the state's budget is in tremendously good shape, but everything is fully funded. And there's additions to some things. For example, you're going to see like community college, that direct aid number is a lot higher. That's in part because of the way the formula works off of University System of Maryland, FTEs. And the University System of Maryland is heavily funded. And also for a first in many years, actually, even though the community college funding is still behind where it was intended to be a number of years ago, some of you remember all these battles. Lots of times that formula does get changed in a budget reconciliation act to not fund where they would be in the formula that year. That did not happen this year, so that's really great news for our community colleges. Also, the health formula grant has got a lot of additional funding in it this year, which is great, very timely. And then also I know that, the governor heavily promoted his public safety initiative. And one piece of that initiative is enhancing the police aid formula. The one thing I will say about this is, particularly for the police aid formula, since there's not a budget reconciliation act this year, these formulas didn't change. So for police aid, I think that this is kind of the question, like what happens next if this is operating aid and you're not certain that that same increase would carry through next year. So I think that that's something that's going to be discussed with the legislature. By the way, I want to add that this afternoon at 3, the Maryland Department of Legislative Services, the nonpartisan staffing agency for the legislature, is going to, go through the budget with a much more fine-tooth comb. And so we'll have a lot more information about the budget since I spent the weekend looking at all the detail, and I will send out to the council staff that document so they have a little bit more information on how this is put together. The governor had about a $4 billion surplus to work with. He has a fair amount of ideas about it. He heavily filled the coffers of the rainy day fund. The legislature had just asked for it to be about 9% of general fund. He funds it at about 16%. There's salary enhancements. There's the same problems in the county, exist at the state in a very serious way with high rates of vacancy and a lot of issues related to the state workforce that he is seeking to address in his budget. Cybersecurity, he dots some I's and crosses some T's on some long-term unfunded liabilities, including the local government trust that has been the subject of something we've been interested in for many years. He also heavily funds infrastructure investment, but leaves a lot of money left there. And also, he did not program any of the federal infrastructure bill. So that's going to be coming in as a supplemental. So there's a lot of opportunity in this budget. On the public school construction side, something we've always been very interested in, he funds public school construction to the tune of about $1 billion. That what we call the traditional program, that old base program, the original program is about 285, and the enrollment growth and relocatable classroom program, they call it in the budget here, the supplemental program, is funded at about 95 million. He's got other programs funded, and then the new Built to Learn Act, there's $480 million of revenue bonds in there for that. So lots of stuff going on. Again, he has put together a tax package that is big. He's, for a number of years, has put in pieces of legislation to reduce taxes for retirees. So this is another attempt at that. A couple of other things, including the new refundable earned income tax credit program. He is looking to remove the sunset on that program, but those benefits would not accrue to those that are filing with the taxpayer ID. So I think that's going to be discussed. Also, I know that there's not a feeling that this necessarily has to be addressed yet because the program doesn't sunset yet. So that's, by the way, I know there's always been an interest too in provider healthcare rates, and those adjustments are funded in his budget. And so that's kind of a big picture overview. Again, a lot of money, a lot of opportunity. Also, I would note too, he underfunded some of the blueprint to two of the big subdivisions, Prince George's and Baltimore City. So I think that that's going to set up a whole discussion about that blueprint program, potentially even the enrollment numbers that he chose to use in funding the formula. So that's kind of the big picture.
Thank you, Melanie, for that update. Do we have any sense on what the initial reaction is from our colleagues in the delegation to the proposals by the governor? Were there some in particular that rose to a level that would lead us to believe they weren't supportive of or were supportive of?
Well, I think all these proposals, they will, pursue aggressively. I mean, particularly, I think that, the tax proposal is big. And while it's funded through 2027, it's got a big tail on the back end of it, particularly for that retiree piece. I know that there's a lot of conversation about his public safety program, but there's certainly things in it that a county like we would like. There's grant opportunities, and again, to have a substantial increase in police aid, even if it's 1 year, we hope it's not. But I think all of these things, they will go through it with a fine-tooth comb, as they have a big staff of budget analysts that it's their stock and trade to know every detail of this budget. Now, I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about it, and they'll be active. Also, on the capital side, the General Assembly had asked the governor in their spending affordability report to leave them with about $300 million to allocate as they saw fit for one-time capital programs, and he did not do that. The numbers much lower than that. So those are the types of things that I think will be highlighted this afternoon at 3 o'clock in that briefing, and that the legislature will busily pursue, as they always do.
Thank you. Any questions from colleagues? Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Council President. And so, Mel, I just wanted to ask about two things. One, I noticed that retirement contributions, specifically for Board of Education, went down. So I was just curious, is that a continuation of the reduction of funding from the state? But I thought that was done. So pin in that one. And then also, when it comes to police, could we not use that money for training or something like that? Because we've been talking about utilizing so much training in terms of reimagining police task force. Are there any restrictions on how we use that money that the governor's been touting so much about him putting forth in this year's budget?
Well, Councilmember Rice, what I'd like to do is I'll send you some additional detail on his public safety proposal. Some of that proposal, I think it was about $100 million, is directed entirely at state police and not local governments. But
Okay.
police aid, I don't know that there's restrictions about police aid, about, what you can do, but there's also in his kind of 5-point program, there are grant opportunities, discretionary grant opportunities that we would be able to apply for, depending on how the detail works out and what ultimately happens, but that would benefit any county government or municipality for training purposes.
Excellent.
Oh, excuse me, on the retirement piece. So, the negotiation a number of years ago that the state would keep its long-term liability obligations, but that the normal costs of the retirement system would be passed on to actually LEAs.
Right.
As you know, the financer of an LEA is the county government. So that decrease has been going on for a while in the state share, relatively speaking, and so you see another year of that phasing itself in.
When is the last year of the phase-in, Mel? Because I thought it was last year, but I was mistaken, obviously.
I can't tell you that. I can find out for you. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
and I'm not certain that phase-in is even the right term to be used. Maybe reality might be a better term. The fact that as normal costs, become a greater and greater share, and as they pay down their long-term liabilities, well, it's an additional burden on local governments.
All right, I think that is it. So unless there are any more questions, hearing none, this was an efficient state legislative meeting this morning.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. Mel, thanks. Keep up the great work. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Councilmember Navarro.
2 weeks.
Oh. Nope,
Okay.
Councilmember Navarro did not ever hand up. Okay.
Okay.
I always forget to lower the hand.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, that is it. So Ms. McCartney Green, unless there's anything I've missed, I think we can adjourn. Is that correct?
See you in 2 weeks.
Okay, see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.